أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي أيها المعزى يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك وآل بيتك المظلومين الغر الميامين المنتجبين، وعلى ابنك الموعود المهدي المنتظر عجل الله فرجه الشريف. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى المستشهدين بين يديك. سادتي يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل إني أمرت أن أعبد الله مخلصا له الدين. Say, I am commanded to worship Allah, being sincerely devoted to Him alone. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Sending a gift for the oppressed masters of this world, the Ahlul Bayt, the progeny of the Prophet. Recite 3 loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Tonight is the eve of Ashura. Ashura, a day that is unlike any other day. لا يوم كيومك يا أبا عبد الله. Why? Were 30,000 of the most wicked of Allah's creation, 30,000 of the most evil people of Allah's creation point their swords and point their weapons against Allah's best of creation, Imam al-Hussein and his companions. 30,000. A battle that took place in Karbala. A battle between Pharaoh and Musa. A battle between Namrud and Ibrahim. A battle between Rasulullah and Quraysh. A battle between Amir al-Mu'mineen and Bani Umayyah. A battle between Imam al-Hasan and Muawiyah. A battle between falsehood and righteousness. A battle between good versus evil. A battle between Allah's actual religion and the devil's made up religion. The religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was so special about this religion? Now obviously from one side you had people who practiced religion in every corner of it. And the other side, it was like an empty box. Bani Umayyah and their practicing of religion, they only practiced the top part, the skin, while inside it was empty. Or actually, it was filled with filth. It was just hypocrisy. What is so special about this religion? That people so sacred give their sacrifices, their dearest of sacrifices for this religion. What is so special? This religion, now obviously the actual religion of Allah, after we understand it, and to be more specific, the religion that was delivered by the Prophet, the religion of Imam al-Hussein. When we say religion, this is what we mean. The religion of Imam al-Hussein, salamullah alayh. The complete religion. We've already heard that if you practice religion and if you come close to religion, you will have a very good life in the hereafter, in the akhirah. You will be placed in heaven where you will have a kingdom that is no like any other kingdom. ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب بشر. إذا رأيت ثم رأيت نعيما وملكا كبيرا. When you practice your religion on the day of judgment, Allah will place you in heaven and you will have whatever you want. We've all probably heard of this before. That is true. But practicing religion also benefits us in this world before the hereafter. Yes. For instance, just an example, women who wear hijab and maintain chastity, they are benefiting in this life before the hereafter. This is with regards to do with the actions. The actions that our religion ordered us to follow. Just an example. Once I saw a poster on social media displaying there was 2 lollies. One lolly was not covered and the other one was covered. The non-covered one had insects and flies on them, but the covered one was protected. Hijab protects, and hijab protects from fasad between the communities. And a woman who wears hijab, which men would come and seek her? Righteous men. But a woman who does not wear hijab, or who does not wear hijab correctly, she would attract men that are not very righteous, that are not seeking to help the woman, but to use her. With regards to, for example, being truthful and not lying. Take a look at businesses here in the West, for example. They know that if they lie about their products, they will lose their customers. So if you follow religion and if you don't lie, you are protecting yourself, your business, from losing your customers. What else? If you have a dispute with someone, that person has committed oppression against you, has taken your right. If you, for example, also do oppression, if you not treat them with justice, instead, for example, you start saying stuff that are not true. You have a dispute with someone and you start saying stuff, for example, you are the worst person in the world. You are not practicing justice. Or you start taking your right more than what you deserve. What happens? You will lose the fight. As simple as that. This is what happens between disputes. So Islam tells us that protect yourself and maintain justice. Do not take more than your right. And those people in disputes, when they practice their religion and they do not do things like that, what happens? They're winning the fight. But if they do not, they will lose the fight. When a person gets married, and that is just an example of listening to religion and adhering to its teachings. Religion says and calls out for people to get married. The sooner the better. They look for the righteous person and they get married. And they take it easy as well. What happens? Also, it teaches them to bring offspring. Not like how it happens, how it's been advocated today, that do not bring children. The less the children, the better. But that's not true. Physically speaking, the more members of the family increases, the more stable and stronger the family will be. So when you adhere, when you listen to God's religion, you are benefiting in this world before the hereafter. For example, with regards to our beliefs that religion brings, that do not look at this dunya, learn about the reality of this dunya. This dunya is temporary. This dunya is not your actual life. Your actual life is the akhirah. Darul akhirah lahiyal hayawan. So when you have this viewpoint, when you have this world view of the dunya, when things go wrong in this dunya, you do get affected, but you won't lose your hope. If a non-believer, for example, loses its dunya, they will become depressed and so down to the point where they think of committing suicide. Why? Because ad-dunya muntaha absaruhum. Ad-dunya muntaha basar al-a'ma, as the hadith says by Amir al-Mu'mineen, as narrated from him. This dunya is the end viewpoint of the one that is blind. So when they lose something from this dunya, they will just not handle it anymore. But a person who's a believer, they're benefiting in this dunya before the hereafter. And as I mentioned religion, I would like to mention a pillar of religion. That is prayer, as-salah. As-salah amudud din. إن ذكرت إن قبلت قبل ما سواها وإن ردت رد ما سواها. If the prayer is rejected on the day of judgment, everything else is rejected. If the prayer is not rejected and accepted, everything else accepted. One day, a person, as narrated, came to one of the imams and he asked him to list the sins of this religion. So the imam started listing. First he said al-kufru billah, right? Not believing in Allah, rejecting Allah, uquq al-walidain, dishonoring your parents, so on and so forth. But he didn't mention not praying. So the person asked the imam, how come you didn't mention not praying? So the imam told him that, what did I say from the first list? I said al-kufru billah, among the sins. So prayer is part of that. Prayer, the one that doesn't pray, is like equal to not believing God, to rejecting God. Prayer is just so important that Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, even when he was in the middle of battle, when his companions were slain and martyred, when it was Salat Subh, he prayed before the battle, and then when it was in the middle of battle, Salatul Dhuhr, he called out so that he would be able to pray and pray Jama'ah. Now he prayed Salatul Khawf. Salatul Dhuhr was cut off to 2 rak'at because he was in a war, but he prayed. Salat, how many times is Salat mentioned in the Quran? Probably tens of times. It's so important to the point where those who take prayer lightly, they will not have a blessing in this life. Those who sometimes pray, sometimes don't pray, they just pray at qada. Sometimes, or most of the time, they just pray at the end of the time. If you can, if you're at school, and if you're able to pray on time, why not? If you're at work and you're able to take some time to pray, why not? There's a long hadith in which Fatima Zahra asks the Prophet that what would happen to someone that takes prayer lightly, tahawana fi salatih. So the Prophet lists a lot of things that happens to this person. In this life, when he's dying, in the grave, on the day of judgment, a lot of things happen to them. In this life, يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ الْبَرَكَةَ مِنْ عُمْرِهِ. Blessing is taken from them in this life. يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ الْبَرَكَةَ مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. Blessing in their sustenance and their rizq is taken. When they're about to die, يَمُوتُ ذَلِيلًا. They die in a humiliated way. When they're in their grave, a creation comes to the grave that will annoy them. يُزْعِجُهُ فِي قَبْرِهِ. It's a headache. Prayer is just important. In the traditions, it's also considered to be worse than committing adultery. Because from committing adultery, a person is getting something out of it. It's getting some taladduth. But with not praying, there isn't anything. It's just the fact of being lazy. Now, we go back to the actual subject, religion. What happens to those people that choose to reject religion? That choose to commit sins? Sins after sins after sins. What will happen to them? The thing that will happen is that their hearts will start to become darkened more and more. Initially, a person's heart is soft. Now, by a soft heart, what we mean, it's a metaphor. Someone who is caring. But when a person starts committing sins and sins after sins, it is affecting his self. It's affecting his heart, and his heart starts to become more harsh, more like a rock, until it becomes like a rock. It says in the Quran, إِنْ هِيَ كَالْحَجَارَ ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. Your hearts became hardened after that. إِنْ هِيَ كَالْحَجَارَ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. It becomes like as harsh as a rock, even more than a rock. Sometimes a person, they don't use their aql. They commit a crime, but they're not using their aql. But sometimes, it's not just the aql, it's also the emotions. It's also the emotions. Some sins, for example, some sins, just like I mentioned prayer, not praying, you're not getting something out of it. Those people who commit these immoral acts that has been advocated for here in the West, they're not getting something out of it. It's not like adultery, for example. So what pushes them? Some sins, they're big. Why? Because the person, they're just doing it and they're not getting things out of them. So they become big sins and unforgivable. And when we go back to Karbala, we find these types of creations where when they committed this much sins, their heart just becomes hardened. It says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, قتل الإنسان ما أكفره. May the human be killed. How much of a rejecter, how much of a kafir he is. Now, if we think that on the day of Ashura, they were not kuffar, they were munafiqeen. No, but they are also kuffar. Imam al-Hussein says to them that إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ لَكُمْ دِينٌ, you don't have religion. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas says, يَا نَفْسْ لَا تَخْشَيْ مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ. They're not mu'mineen, they're kuffar. Sayyidah Zainab says, أَمَا فِيكُمْ Muslim. And we need to understand the meaning of kufr also. Not like where other Muslims, they come and they kill the believers to justify that we're killing the kuffar. No, we need to understand what it means. So, قُتِلَ الْإِنسان مَا أَكْفَرَهُ. What happened on the day of Ashura? After they had murdered all the companions of Imam al-Hussein. And each murder, they were probably able to justify for that murder. Yes, we killed them because they didn't do bay'ah. Any justification that might trick anyone. But what about the infant, Abdullah al-Radi'? What about the infant? What kind of a justification can they provide? وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. On the day of Ashura, after Imam al-Hussein's companions were martyred, Imam al-Hussein came. He approached his sister Sayyidah Zainab. He asked her to bring his infant son, Abdullah al-Radi' to him, so that he would say goodbye to him. He said, ناوليني ولد الصغير حتى أودعه. Sayyida Zainab brought him his baby son. He placed him in his lap and kept kissing him while him being thirsty, and repeated the statement, ويل لهؤلاء القوم إذا كان جدك محمد المصطفى خصمه. Away with these people when your grandfather Muhammad, the chosen one, is their opponent. Then he brought him to the enemy and asked for some water for him, saying, لقد جفت محالب أمه فهل إلى شربة من ماء سبيل. The milks of his mother has become dry. Is there any way for a drinking of water? يا قوم إذا كنت أقاتلكم وتقاتلوني فما ذنب هذا الطفل حتى تمنعوا عنه الماء. O people, if I was fighting you and you were fighting me, what is the crime of this child that you would prevent him from drinking water? When the enemy saw that, among the enemy where there were people, their hearts softened for the baby, saying, what is the crime of this infant? And among them where they said, do not give him water and do not have mercy over him. While they were in that state of dispute, Umar ibn Sa'd la'natullah alayh looked at Harmala, said, اقطع نزاع القوم, cut off the agreement between the people. They say Harmala said that should I shoot the father or the son? Omar said, ألا ترى بياض نحره? Can't you see the whiteness of his throat? So Harmala la'natullahi alayh pointed his arrow towards the infant's throat and released it, slaughtering the infant. Imam al-Hussein received his blood in his hand and threw it up towards the heavens. Imam al-Hussein said, what decreases my affliction is the fact that it is witnessed by Allah. Imam al-Baqir said, not a drop of it fell. Then after the slaughtering of Abdullah, he took him to the camp and buried a small grave for him and buried him. And after that, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam came to bid farewell to the women and children, to the women folk. Ya Sukaina, Ya Fatima, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, alaykunna minni salam. I send my salam to you. He went to the battlefield. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون. شيعتي مهما شربتم عذب ماء فاذكروني، أو سمعتم بقتيل أو ذبيح فاندبوني. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, to avenge Imam al-Husayn's blood and all the blood that were shed in oppression, the prophets and their sons, and to be among those who will support him and to be martyred with him. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.